What is he doing over in Africa? Meddling in their politics. What gives him the right to go into these foreign lands to try to establish quote unquote democracy and to try to save people from quote unquote oppression or the oppressive regimes of these foreign leaders when they haven't figured out democracy on their own soil? They haven't eliminated oppression on their own soil, let alone going into another nation and trying to establish this faulty ideology and this faulty system upon another nation that you have yet to thoroughly figure out and establish successfully yourself. Well, again, here's the mindset. They believe what's best for others and feel responsible for guiding them. They believe that it is their responsibility to establish what's right for the rest of the world.
This idea of taking on responsibility for others because you think you know better is similar to the concept of white man's burden.
It's similar to the concept of white man's burden, and for those who never heard of it, here it is. And again, I'm stopping these videos for those who are coming in. You may be wondering why I keep stopping in between. Well, for YouTube guidelines, when you play videos, sometimes you have to stop it here and there just so that you're not, transgressing their guidelines. So again, fair use, fair use. This is for educational purposes only.
The white man's burden was a belief held by Europeans during the 19th and early 20th centuries. They thought it was their duty to bring civilization and progress to people in other parts of the world, often societies in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. This belief was tied to ideas.
So they did this in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. By the Americas, we understand it was done to the North American Indians. We understand that it was done to the original inhabitants of the Caribbean, right? The Arawak and the Taino Indians and various Indian nations that were in the Caribbean. We understand that it was done in South America, right? He did it in Africa. He did it in Asia, right?
Ideas of racial superiority, where Europeans considered themselves more advanced and capable of improving the lives of others.
So they believed themselves to be more advanced, and through their quote-unquote advancement, they were able to improve the lives, or at least they believed they were able to improve the lives of others. Now, again, we're going to show you what's at the root and the foundation of this so-called improvement, this so-called advancement, this so-called high civilization, this so-called high morality. We're going to show you what's at the root of it.
For example, when European powers colonized countries in Africa and Asia, they often justified their actions by claiming they were helping to bring modernity, technology, and religion to societies they viewed as less developed.
Right. So whenever there's a society they consider to be less developed, what they call today a third world country, they claim that it is their responsibility to bring modernity, meaning modernism, modern ideas, technology, advanced technology, so on and so forth. Now, keep in mind that the people that they are imposing this on never asked for modernity. The people they're trying to impose this upon never asked for technological advancements. But again, the thought behind the ideology of white man's burden is that regardless of whether they ask for it or not, it is my burden, it is my responsibility, it is my duty to impose this upon these nations because, after all, they don't know any better. Right?
This was seen as a responsibility they had to fulfill for the benefit of those they colonized, even if those people didn't necessarily ask for or welcome their help.
There you have it. Many times people, they're not asking for a regime change. They're not asking for LGBTQ rights. They're not asking for, any of these other forms of imposition that the West brings when they go to colonize or impose their will upon these countries. They're not asking for modernity. They're not asking for your technology. In many cases, they're asking to just be left alone. Because many of these nations see what happens when the West, and by the West, we're talking about France, Spain, Great Britain, okay? The three nations that were used to build America. That's what we mean by the West. America is also included in that. But these nations recognize that once the West comes into their country with their technology, with their medicine, with their hospitals, with their culture, with their traditions, yes, conveniences may increase, right? You may see better buildings. You may have access to better internet. You may have more stable electricity. You may have better cars, better vehicles, right? Better shopping centers and stores. Yes, those things may improve. But what happens to the morality of those nations once the West sinks their teeth into these quote unquote third world inferior nations?